Hello everybody and welcome to the Guitar Souls podcast episode number 6. How's it going, Mike?
Alright, man. How are you?
Yeah, good. It has been a while.
Yes.
Life has been getting in the way of recording.
Yes.
We are trying to fix this though and come up with a more reliable schedule and way of getting these out to you because we have a lot of fun doing it, don't we? It's
Absolutely, and as you say, unfortunately real life gets in the way sometimes. It's nothing that we won't let deter us.
I think it's one of those things that just time creeps by. I didn't even realise how much time had gone by. I was aware we needed to do one, and before you know it, it's like, oh, we'll do it in a couple of days. And before you know it, a couple of days has been a couple of weeks.
Just about, aye. Well, maybe put it out to anyone that's listening. What would you like it as a format? Would you want it weekly, bi-weekly, twice a week, monthly? What? Tell us. We'll do what we can.
But we'll be aiming for weekly, of course.
Yeah.
A slight change again this episode. What we're going to do this week is I'm going to give you a slight kind of contents list to give you an idea of what's coming up. So if you do start listening and aren't too crazy about what we are talking about, you can skip ahead and get into some of the other subjects. So today we are going to be talking about, Mike,
Periphery and the idea of record labels. We're also going to be talking about what to look out for in beginner equipment, what's absolute junk and what could be gold. And finally, the kind of emotional topic I would maybe say, because it's very subjective, is the idea of drink and drugs, or people performing whilst on drink and drugs, and what is the right amount, whether you're allowed any, whether you're allowed none at all, and how that can affect you, and basically our points of view on it, and other people's points of view too.
And we cleverly saved this for 420.
Exactly, the perfect day for it.
Yeah.
Blaze it, as the boys say.
So let's jump in with this Periphery news story. So you actually, the thing with the Guitar Souls is we prepare these, we have a little group, and any news stories we see that's interesting, anything we feel like talking about, we chuck those up in there. And then we think, right, when we meet up in a week, we'll talk about those things. And then without fail, as soon as we come to actually record, like that very day, something interesting will happen. We end up talking about that. And this one can't be ignored, can it?
It cannot, and given that it was only published yesterday, at least the piece that I caught my eye with, that caught my eye regarding this, then absolutely it's very relevant, it's very current, and it kind of leads on from our previous conversation about music business, which is fantastic because what we're going to talk about is a great example of what is a subjective kind of matter. But I mean, we don't really see eye to eye on it, but we also do at the same time, which makes it quite cool.
Yeah, we literally covered the original part of this story when we talked about Misha Mansur coming out and saying that he can't make a living with Periphery on its own, and that's why he has to go and do all of these other things. And every member of the band, they go and do all of these other things. And I kind of took issue, not with what he was saying, but with the way, websites were jumping on the misquoting thing and trying to paint Misha as this poor victim who's complaining that he can't make any money. And that wasn't the point of what Misha was saying. We had a great discussion about that. I cannot remember for the life of me which episode it was, but, search it out on SoundCloud, search it out on YouTube.
It might have actually been episode 5.
Was it it could.
I think it might have been. Correct us if we're wrong.
Yeah, you'll
call us
find
assholes.
But in essence, what's happened is it seems that Periphery have left Sumerian Records.
Or I don't think they've left yet, but I think there's the conversation has been had that they are looking into other ways to grow their business venture outside of the record label.
They're listed as independent now online.
Did you check it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
And Misha and the guys have kind of commented on it. And to be honest, I know what you're saying. You're being careful because it might not happen.
I'm just going by the words of what was said as well here. With
the thing is, after this conversation, and Ash Avildsen,
I believe that's how you say it.
We'll just refer to him as Ash.
Yeah, I was going to say herefore known as Ash from Sumerian Records.
If their relationship was reconcilable, Ash has made sure to burn that bridge from this interview.
Yes and no. I think the headline that we both read it from was just as guilty as the one that was jumping on Periphery don't make money. Yep. I think it's very clickbaity. He does say it, but it's taken out of context as to how he means it. Yes. But you're right, the general vibe of the conversation, and this isn't all that good for Periphery, despite him constantly saying, I love the guys and they're great, but racist.
Yeah.
It's like saying, I'm not racist, but...
Yeah.
Like, well, you're definitely going to say something racist now, or at least ignorant.
I'm not racist, but it's my favourite thing to use, in a sense, just to take people off guard. Just say, I'm not racist, but, and then throw something completely unrelated in. Like, I'm not racist, but I hate cornflakes.
Aye.
And it really confuses them. What is he talking about? Maybe it's
no one knows.
No one knows. So, yeah, in theory... well, we're not really journalists, but if we were journalists, we do our due diligence.
Due diligence.
Due diligence. You barely speak English, and you can say that better than me, so well done. We would have done our due diligence and listened to the original recordings. What we're going on here is a transcription that was transcribed via Metal Insider and then reposted on Metal Sucks. Very much, it's kind of gone everywhere, and it's these quotes. So, in theory, these could have been taken completely out of context, but I'm inclined to believe that they're not because they are pretty lengthy.
Yeah, you've got enough of the paragraph to say that this is a fairly accurate representation of the actual point and intent of the conversation, I think.
Yeah, so Ash...
I would consider that some due diligence and ethics as reporters.
So Ash
like
is essentially saying that the band could be making more money.
And he's been saying that since his dawn of time. But the looks of what he's saying is from the start of their career, there was way more to it than could have been. I'll
blast through some of these. There's some hefty reading, but fortunately I can actually read. So I spent the time learning to do that when I was a kid, and it's a worthy skill if anyone out there is thinking of doing it.
Oh, aye.
Learn to read.
You're one of the 10 in Scotland who can read.
So Periphery specifically, they're incredibly talented, and I love the band to death. We've had great success together, but they're their own worst enemy.
But
yeah, they get in their own way. They have a song called Jetpacks Was Yes. I fucking hate the name of that song.
There's so many silly song titles, but they're great that way.
Yeah. Which is a hop, skip, and a jump away from being a massive hit. I would talk to Misha about this, and I would go, dude, your band should be so big. I know you can get the kid in the front row doing all the air guitar and thing and riffing out the drum kit. They know everything about the band. Essentially saying that they know everything about the band, and that's awesome, but really the important thing is to hit the guys that are in the back and to connect with the people that aren't right there in the front and aren't your biggest fans, because that's how you reach the massives, and that's cool. Like, I'm sure we both agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the whole point is connection with everybody, not just the people at the front.
Yeah. So it seems Ash was constantly encouraging them to play that song, and in fact, I think as he goes on to say that Periphery, they actually didn't want to include, I believe it was that song, on the actual record because they described it as old material. And
Ash's point was it's not old material to the new listener, it's only old material to you. You might have played it 200 times more than you want to, but that doesn't change the fact that it's a good song by you that would have great organic reach to listeners. Yeah.
So he goes on and says, look, they could tour more and there are other things they could do to make money. I write them these nice 6-figure checks. Sorry, take that back. I write them nice checks every 6 months for their royalties. They make good money on the road and they reinvest in themselves, and they have their side hustles. The drummer does the teaching thing. Everyone's hustling. But fundamentally, they need to have bigger streams and bigger ticket sales to really have the money that they want to have. You could, but they don't want to go and do the... look like, sorry, what does he say? I look at a band like Tool or Perfect Circle, and is anyone worried about their cred? They don't conform to some verse, chorus, plug and play format. And to me, this is ultimately, I feel, where I listen to what Ash is saying, and I just see him contradicting himself, because he's saying, Periphery, or what you need to do is you need to be more commercial. You need to
apply to the
play
mass
the
market.
hits, apply to the mass market. And now he's saying, well, no, Tool don't care about their cred. A Perfect Circle don't worry about their cred. They just play the things that they want to play. And that, to me, that's why Periphery have been as successful as they have.
Oh, absolutely. It's been music written by them for them that other people can latch onto and understand. There's value in it, regardless of what other people think of it.
Yeah. So really, I guess what we're getting at with this entire interview, and it is a long one, I'll leave a link to it below. I recommend you check it out. Ultimately, to me, it's really a case of Ash just seems incredibly butthurt. Because he knows he's losing a big earner here.
Yes, we went through the roster. Sumerian being one of the biggest, if not the biggest, when it came to like gent and prog, like that kind of progressive tech metal, and even some deathcore, maybe metalcore at least. At least they were the big record label at the start of the movement. Now, I remember Fell Silent, Monuments, After the Burial, quite a few other, Born of Osiris, at times like Follow the Signs and the rest of it. So when this was really blowing up, but we did go through the rest of the roster of existing bands and even bands that have left the label, and Periphery are definitely the biggest.
Yeah.
Like, definitely. There's some big, very big and well-doing bands for themselves, but commercially, at least as a business venture, Periphery are number one. By quite a big jump.
Yeah, that's the thing that bugged me the most. Like, why are you sat here, Ash, doling out advice to these guys on what they need to do to be successful, and they need to take your advice and not do what they think is best for themselves because you know what they need to do to be successful? Essentially, you're saying that none of your bands do any of the things that you think they need to do to be successful then. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some awesomely successful bands on here. I see Chon on there now, and, you know, we checked them out live, and they were great.
Oh, I wasn't expecting too much, and they absolutely kicked the dick off me.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
But, yeah, I just don't see the advice that's being doled out to Periphery here. Like, is that being applied to every other artist on your label?
To play devil's advocate, it might be the case that is Ash's approach with all the bands, but Periphery have been the one that have had that magic golden ticket, and they've had the opportunities, and maybe he's just frustrated they never took the opportunities when he presented them.
Yeah.
And how he could help them, and now that they've seen they can do it on their own, he's now upset that he, maybe not that he wasn't part of it, but he's maybe not getting the due diligence and respect for being the person that's kind of brought them to that point.
Yep. I
might be wrong, and I'd like to be a defence of him, because any experience I've had with record labels has always been incredibly positive.
Yep.
Carlos at Gorehouse Records has always been brilliant with us, always. And I'd love to think that applies across the board to what I would maybe consider as, well, it's not underground, this is very mainstream, but metal's quite a niche market, especially when you get into this kind of genre and this style of music. So I hope that is his approach, and that what I've had and experiences wise is maybe the same as every other band, but that's just not the case for definite.
But yeah, so I feel that, like, what this really comes down to is Ash finding himself in this position where he's dealing with a band that sees what he does, i.e. being a record label, as defunct in 2018 for a band of that size. Because the problem with discussions like this is guys like Ash, they always make reference to, you know, Tool and Perfect Circle and all of these big bands. It's the same old route, like, just go out and play gigs and things will take off. It doesn't. It's different now.
But it's been different for 15 years. You go back 15 years and you'll see that Enter Shikari done it themselves through MySpace and are actually touring through stadiums. Who was the other one? Bring Me the Horizon. They are huge. Don't get me wrong, they've changed their sound. Yeah. But they are genuinely like the next wave of stadium rock bands.
But again, you're right, that's 15 years ago now. It's a long time ago.
It's insane, isn't it? I was thinking 20 and I'm going, that's too far away. Yeah. But it's not far off.
It's getting there. But the thing is, even then, if you think of that time, I still think a record label was hugely important because I remember the way that you heard about bands was, music TV, which was big. And again, you needed the clout of a label and a publisher to get you in on something like that.
The major ones, absolutely, yeah.
And then, of course, just general marketing of CDs and things, because these were the days where you would go into CD shops over here, HMV, though at the time it would have been
FOP and whoever else,
Virgin,
that too,
Virgin Music, and they're dead. Those things aren't a thing anymore. Like, HMV is just disappearing over here.
The internet has done some terrible things, and there's a lot to speak for at the convenience of accessibility. Yeah.
So unless a label is going to come in now and say, what we're going to do to help you make a record is spend a lot of money on marketing on Facebook for you, like, what are you doing? Especially for a band like Periphery, like, recording budgets are through the toilet. They're just not there anymore. The Black Album cost $1 million to record.
See, I think there's also another thing in that doesn't get taken into consideration. Periphery probably did all the recording, mixing and mastering, etc. themselves.
Yeah.
So even if they expense the label for it, it's still going to be significantly cheaper.
Yeah.
and whether they invoiced it at full price, it's money going back into the band. It's not just going to someone else who then gives them a product.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the nature of most bands these days, which kind of adds to your argument of what are labels doing. For a band of that size, there probably isn't much more that Sumerian could do except for the fact they say they're on Sumerian, and it's a bit of brand loyalty and clout in that respect. But I can guarantee more people know the name Periphery than they do Sumerian Records.
Yeah. I was actually under the impression that, and it will be a European thing, I was under the impression that Periphery were on Roadrunner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've got the first Periphery album on CD and it says Roadrunner on it, so that'll be a European distribution thing, I'm
Potentially.
sure. But yeah, so the idea of like associating them with Sumerian is not something that even crops into my mind. But, you know, Periphery, a huge band. And yeah, so I feel that when you really summarise, you've got a guy that sounds quite angry about the fact that he's losing a huge earner for him and trying to, again, do what the websites were doing months ago where they were trying to paint Misha in this light whereby he's moaning about how much money he makes. But no, yeah, all right, the band do make a lot of money touring and they make a lot of money in royalties of album sales, I'm sure. But yeah, they pump it all straight back into the band.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The key word of that full paragraph is the word reinvest.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not walking away with that money in your pocket, it's okay, you're maybe buying new equipment and upkeeping your tour bus and paying your staff. That's great. That keeps the business running, but it doesn't feed you.
Yeah. Every artist has to fight this kind of business versus art thing. And I kind of like Misha has kind of addressed this situation on Facebook. I don't have what he said to hand, but I remember essentially what he's getting at is, you know, Periphery was never about making money for us. We do it for the love of it. And I genuinely believe that. I don't think it's the starving artist trying to convince you that he's a pure artist.
Oh.
Periphery could be more commercial than they are.
Oh, yeah.
But they're not. They make the music that they want to make, and I respect that. And everything else that they do on the side, you know, signature guitars, get good drums,
pedals, precision devices.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on outside of that band.
Devices.
And this is all just ways of supplementing that income.
Of course. Like, at the end of the day, they're dedicating all their time to writing music that they want to write, but they still need to eat.
Yeah.
So,
and drive sports cars.
Well, that would be all right.
But yeah, so fucking
what?
I
so fucking what? They're working hard for it. Let them.
Yeah. Again, there's this idea that like a musician in a touring band should be earning £30,000 a year, and if they're earning £30,000 a year, they've got nothing to complain about. It's like if I want to earn £30,000 a year, I'll just go and get a 9 to 5, you know? And these guys deserve to be
95 at piece 30 grand. I'll put it that way.
These guys deserve to be compensated for the joy that they bring to people's lives. So,
absolutely. Yeah. And it's not as if they don't work hard. Musicians get a shit fucking time of it, of like you're just playing guitar and blah blah blah. No, you're writing off months of your own life to rehearsing, to make sure your equipment's up to date, to travelling, to meeting people. And I'm not saying it's a burden, but if you're having a bad day, you need to put that aside, leave it at the door, and go on either into the venue, speak to people, be friendly, get to know them. Then you need to be on stage and you need to give it your A game. It's not always easy when you're not feeling well, even if you're fucking hungover or whatever, which we'll follow on to later on. Or even if you're just generally like mentally down or drained, like these people need to compartmentalise everything else in their life on a daily basis.
Yeah.
That's not easy. That takes its toll.
Yeah.
Why should they not be allowed the small joys in life? Great, I've got a nice car that when I go home, I've got 10 days between tours. Fuck it, I'm going to go and drive my nice car for 10 days.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of pressure that goes with being in a band, especially Periphery's position. The example I'd think of is Joe Bonamassa, actually. Because I was talking to somebody in the industry recently. They will remain nameless because they've been having some issues with Joe Bonamassa on social media. And some of the comments that he had been leaving on some of their videos because they were talking about one of his new products. And Joe really, really started getting very unprofessional with some of the readers, like verging on abusive with readers, like calling them names and things. And ultimately, you know, Joe Bonamassa's Joe Bonamassa. Fair enough. That's what I'd do. You know that. Just do whatever the fuck you want kind of thing. But I'm my own boss. Joe is his own boss, sure. But he also employs the best part of 100 people. So it's not. He's got that added responsibility.
Yes.
So really, I'm using this as an opportunity to say, Joe Bonamassa, what are you thinking? But when it comes to being in a band like Periphery, stuff like that will niggle in the back of your mind. It's
totally.
not just you that is relying on this. It's every member of your road crew. It's your sound guy. It's the people that deal with your merch. It's
The venues,
people at the label,
like fans.
Yeah.
It's everybody.
Guy that drives the bus,
It cascades.
Yeah.
And then you've got their families affected as well. Like, it's so much bigger than you realise when you take that into account.
Yeah. And the sad part is these guys are the ones making, I'm not gonna say the least, but let's say the least money. There's just so many middlemen. There's labels, and you've got your publisher, and you've got your merchandise, and who's dealing with the distribution of your merchandise. You've got to hate the fact that when you sell tickets, the venue is adding on a ridiculous ticketing fee and then an additional processing fee. I've just bought tickets to a show, and it cost me £150 for 2 tickets. And of that, almost £30 of that was fees that were added on top. And so all these middlemen just kind of picking away at you, and we'll use this as a way of leading on to, like, do you think Periphery are doing the right thing then? Do you think Periphery need a label? Do you think they're going to be all right?
Given the state they're in just now, absolutely. The size of the band, the members themselves are part of that as well, though. They're all very professional, hence why they're surviving, and hence why Misha would openly say in an interview, of course we need to find other ways to make money. That's just business. We want to write the music we want to write and look after the fans and give everyone 110% that we can. If we don't have income coming in from passive revenue streams or other stuff that we can do that's not as intense as writing music for people, then we couldn't do this at all. Do you know what I mean? I think they'll do really well, actually, because their fan base is pretty loyal. We all know that.
Ridiculously loyal.
They're a band that, as we were talking about the other day, that they are greater than the sum of their parts. By far. Like, they're all incredibly talented.
Yep.
I think Nolly leaving the band, with no offence to them, is probably one of the worst things that could happen to them.
Yeah.
No, like, I'm not saying, like...
No, I know what you mean.
He's the best member or whatever, but he brought so much to them.
Yeah.
Like, everybody in the band's fucking outrageous at what they do. And they're all marketable people as well. They're all young, they're all smart, they're all very much into the community side of it.
How old is Misha? Keep talking.
Misha can't be much older than us. I would think he's probably about, 35 maybe? Sorry if I got your age wrong, Misha. If there's any chance you're ever listening.
He's 53. No, he's 33.
35 is a good guess.
Yeah. So essentially, guys like Misha, they're, in the grand scheme of things, they're young. He's a young guy. And I'm not going to say he's pioneering the way you do business in the music industry, but he's going out there and he's carving his own thing. And all of those guys are. And, again, hats off to that, because it takes risk to have success.
Yes. See, you go back on your point just saying pioneering. Well, he's not pioneering how business is done, but he is pioneering letting people see how business is done and giving younger musicians and less experienced musicians and bands just hints at the best way to go about it if you are trying to make it a sustainable, like, way of living.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not a secretive thing, but not many people come out and say, well, I've got this project and that project and this makes me money and that makes me money, or even just the frank honesty that is, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be in Periphery. We certainly wouldn't be touring the world because I wouldn't have money.
Yeah.
That's
regarding
the elephant in the room.
Things outside of Periphery, like Misha and Mark released that Haunted Shores EP, right? And surely that, you can't, as a label guy, you can't say to Misha, you need a label, because he knows whether or not he needs a label. I don't know how successful the Haunted Shores EP was, but what I know is that it was self-released,
yes,
and digitally, and they have this platform, Facebook, Twitter, their personal Facebooks and all of that, where they can reach out to their fans who are extremely loyal anyway, and they can say, here's a new thing that we've released, go and check it out. So he's got all of the data to see how well Haunted Shores did. Now multiply that by 5, and that's going to be what something that says Periphery on it is going to do, essentially. I just look at it and I'm like, Ash, what are you bringing to the table for these guys?
It's maybe the distribution side, you don't know.
Yeah, but that was the point that I made with HMV. Like, what distribution now?
To a point.
Periphery could release their next album and have it solely digital, and would it be the end of the world? would they be able to talk to a few people to work out a way to release vinyl that they sold on their website, which will sell like hotcakes? You know, it can all be done. I made CDs, all right, distributing is harder. But again, they can talk to someone and just get a distribution deal rather than like a
full label. Yeah.
Because everything that a label is doing for you, everything that anyone that you work with, every single little thing that they do to you is an extra percent that they want. An extra percent they're entitled to.
Yeah, justified.
Yeah. So cutting out people that you don't really need, that's just good business sense to me.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to leave it on, because quite honestly, it's all that really needs to be said. They're not doing anything bad, and it'll be nice to see where it goes. If they leave Sumerian for definite, obviously there's not been any like statements released except Ash talking about it on Jamie Jaster's podcast. But aye, it'll be very interesting to see, and I think you'd be right in saying that they'll do well.
Yeah. And you know what? Even if their next album sells half as many copies as the album before that, as 3 Select Difficulty, if they're not giving away half of the revenue to a label, then they're still breaking even, you know? So as a business decision, yeah, really interested to see where things go. You know, this is one of those things, you know, when people say, I'll eat my hat if Periphery...
You better not eat your hat, I gave you that.
Yeah, where is my hat? It's in the living room somewhere. I don't know what I'm going to offer to eat. I'll eat my drum kit, you know, if Periphery don't make a success of this. Like, there's just not a single bone in my body that thinks that Periphery won't go out and make a massive success of whatever they turn their hands to. Super savvy lads, very smart in the industry, very talented musicians, great composers. They just know what they're doing. So again, I'm not a metal guy. I'm not even a massive Periphery fan. I like Juggernaut, which I think that double disc is absolutely incredible. But yeah, much respect for those guys. So
grafters.
There you go. That's what we think.
Speaking of grafting, talking about